From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sony Gray. Vote counting is complete in most provinces of Zimbabwe as the results of the presidential elections are slowly coming in. Zimbabwe's Electoral Commission announced just 7 constituencies out of 210. ZANU-PF has 6, with MDC Alliance winning 1. Chairman Priscilla Chigumba said there is no rigging or cheating in the country's first election since the ousting of Robert Mugabe. While results are still coming in, 40-year-old lawyer Nelson Chamisa of the opposition MDC is already claiming victory.
Presidential results will only be announced once the Commission has completed the collation of all presidential polling station returns in the 10,985 polling stations at the National Results Center. And as I previously stated this morning, the law provides that the presidential results must be announced within 5 days of an election, but if we're able to collate the results earlier, the nation will be advised sooner.
As we said earlier, Zimbabwe's opposition MDC party is already claiming victory. Senior party official Tendai Biti alleged that the authorities were delaying the publication of results, while the incumbent president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has also said he was confident of victory.
We will protect this vote. People of Zimbabwe have waited for so long, patiently. They've resisted the temptation of taking up unlawful and constitutional means of achieving change.
Your assassination.
We have won the election. We've collected the results. The results show that we have won. We are now daring and asking and pushing ZEC to announce the results.
We are joined now by Tatenda Mashonda. He's a Wake Forest University graduate in politics and international affairs and a researcher and writer on African politics and geopolitical affairs. Thank you for joining us, Tatenda. So tell us, both sides are claiming victory here, and there are accusations that the results are being delayed. Are these being justified? Are these justified?
Well, first of all, let me say that this is an interesting election for Zimbabweans, to say the least. The reason being that it's the first time we have 2 new candidates on the ballot, without, of course, Robert Mugabe or Morgan Tsvangirai. And you have Nelson Chamisa and Emmerson Mnangagwa, an illegitimate president who came through a military coup back in November. I think the claims by the MDC Alliance that they've won the election, they are legitimate. Because you really don't have to wait for ZEC to announce the results, which have been already posted outside every polling station. So this ploy by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to delay the announcement of the results is trying to demoralize the Zimbabweans, the will of the people who voted for the MDC Alliance.
Now, Tadendo, analysts have said that if the results are delayed, it could promote anxiety and possibly even violence. Is there any truth to those statements? Tadendo, are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you. Well, it is the will of the people which is speaking violence or no violence. The will of the people should be respected. They voted for a candidate which they wanted. So violence or violence, this is not an issue. This is the will of the people that has to be respected.
And, I mean, as a Zimbabwean, this is a historic election. How have you seen the general electoral process from the beginning to today?
Starting off, I think pre the election environment, it was not even. The Electoral Commission denied the opposition parties the symbol to a verifiable and a searchable voters roll, which according to the law, they're supposed to provide, and they're also supposed to provide access to all the opposition parties in terms of where the ballot papers are being printed and so forth. And that didn't happen. The media also has not been very fair to the opposition parties. It has given unfair advantage to the ruling party and incumbents. So those issues to go off into an election were already giving advantage to the ruling party. But nonetheless, the will of the people spoke, and the people voted in numbers to remove the ruling party, ZANU-PF.
So if there's a transition of power, the first in over 40 years, do you expect it to be smooth?
Come again?
Okay. If there's a transition of power, the first in over 40 years, I asked if you expect it to be smooth, but actually I'm going to change slightly. I'm going to ask you, what will this mean for Zimbabwe, the transition of power?
Well, the transition of power in Zimbabwe will mean that, you know, we have started an interesting and productive journey fighting poverty, removing military state capture, because those are the things that we are fighting in this election. We are fighting poverty, we are fighting unemployment. Look, we have people who are in their 30s, graduates, but they've never seen a pay slip, and we are fighting those things: urban poverty, rural poverty, and the removal of state capture by the military. So the transition from power means that the Second Republic in Zimbabwe will be a democratic one, a democratic developmental state.
Thank you so much for chatting with us, Tatenda. We appreciate your insight on this issue.
Thank you.
More news now. In Colombia, at least 8 people have been murdered and a number of others wounded in an attack in the Catatumbo region in the north of the Santander department. According to eyewitnesses, a group of gunmen on motorbikes opened fire on the victims, killing them on the spot. The massacre occurred at a pool hall in the neighborhood of Villa Esperanza in the municipality of El Tara in broad daylight. One of the victims was Freddy Quintero, a social leader and president of the local Community Action Board. 2 others killed and one of those injured were former FARC members taking part in the process of reintegration, part of the process of the reintegration of the former guerrilla members. The area where the massacre took place has been the scene of conflict between the National Liberation Army, ELN, and the Popular Liberation Army, the EPL. The ELN has denied any involvement in the killings and has released a statement condemning the attack. The armed group, which is currently holding peace talks with the government, called on the authorities to investigate the shooting and deliver justice as soon as possible. And the Colombian president, Juan Manuel Santos, also condemned the killings and said that those responsible will face harsh punishment. The conflict in this area of Colombia has affected at least 145,000 people, with thousands of inhabitants facing forced internal displacement. Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega says he is ready to renew talks with the opposition. Ortega called for the United Nations to mediate in the re-establishment of peace in the country, which has been hit by a political crisis since mid-April, which has left at least 265 people killed, according to the Commission for Truth, Peace and Justice. The Nicaraguan president explained that his government has contacted the UN General Secretary Antonio Guterres, different international organizations, and Cardinal Leopoldo Brenes. The Nicaraguan Catholic Church has also said it is willing to promote dialogue. Meanwhile, demonstrations continue in the streets. Students and doctors protested in the northwestern town of Leon against the recent dismissal of public doctors and nurses. They say they have been fired for treating wounded protesters. The government says the protests and the violence have been promoted by the United States in an attempt to destabilize the country. More news in a minute, but first here's this video from our colleagues in multimedia. Welcome back. On Monday, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro participated in the 4th Congress of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela. Maduro said that the Bolivarian state is moving in the direction of economic recovery through policies that will be executed within the 2025 plan for the nation, which is designed to facilitate the stabilization of the national economy.
We have the economic project left to us by Commander Hugo Chavez. We have the Plan de la Patria 2025, and now we have a comprehensive program to restore the economy of the country in 5 years. We want to push for productive growth to achieve economic prosperity and to improve the lives of Venezuelans.
A judge has rejected a request by the former Peruvian president, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, to travel to the United States for a medical checkup. Kuczynski, who is not allowed to leave Peru for 18 months, had requested permission to visit the same health clinic where he was screened in 2013. The former president is being investigated for his alleged links to the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht, a political scandal that forced him to resign as president in March. Teachers in Argentina are holding a second day of strikes to demand an official response to their salary demands.
Thousands of teachers started a national strike organized by the Confederation of Education Workers, with classes being suspended in at least 5 provinces, among them Buenos Aires and the federal capital.
The consequences of the call to the national parties brings conflict to the provinces because national funds are being withheld, breaching the Educational Financial Act. The government does not comply with the law.
Teachers won't accept this, and the conflict will get worse as long as the government doesn't understand that we will not accept a decrease in our salaries.
The protest is a measure that will last for 48 hours, and is a demand for the reintegration of the National Party, eliminated by the government of Mauricio Macri in 2017. Teachers in Buenos Aires joined the strike despite the attempt of the governor, María Eugenia Vidal, to prevent it.
This measure doesn't violate any mandatory conciliation because it wasn't objected to, nor was it questioned by the authorities. It is a national measure.
Teachers denounced that the government plans to eliminate all the educational incentives for public education and student training as part of the tax adjustment that is led to comply with the commitment assumed with the International Monetary Fund.
There is a national project to deteriorate public education. We have said that we will continue fighting for the social right to education, for a new educational financing law, and in defense of educational retirement. And what is happening now? We anticipated it.
It is the 5th strike from the education workers in this school year, and the teachers do not rule out to continue next week after the denial from the national government to negotiate a fair wage increase.
The Caravan Against Hunger continues in Brazil. It is a protest meant to highlight the rise in poverty following the coup against former President Dilma Rousseff. Our correspondent in Belo Horizonte, Andre Vieira, has been following the caravan, and he sends us reports.
On its 4th day, the Caravan Against Hunger reached Belo Horizonte. This is its 3rd stop after traveling over 1,800 kilometers from its starting point in Caetés, in the state of Pernambuco. The caravan heads to the MST offices in Minas Gerais to host an event against hunger and to demand that former President Lula da Silva be released from jail.
We are denouncing the return of poverty, the return of hunger for millions of Brazilians, but we are also shouting Lula libre. Lula represents the people. He is our source of sustenance. There is no place for hunger in the society we want.
Data collected in the semi-arid region of the country shows that ever since the 2016 coup against Dilma Rousseff, 7 million people are living in extreme poverty in this region alone.
Nós estamos vivendo golpe.
We are living the aftermath of a coup that was carried out by capitalist interests, by foreign players, by multinationals. This coup has the support of powerful nations that do not care about the Brazilian people and do not want our nation to be sovereign.
Tem o apoio de países poderosos.
During Monday's activities in Belo Horizonte, many artists took part in the demonstration. They condemned the fact that Lula is a political prisoner, and they are demanding that he be allowed to take part in October's general elections, as is his constitutional right.
This march is meant to renew our energies, to retake the streets and demand Lula's freedom.
From Belo Horizonte, the caravan will head to Sao Paulo and then Curitiba to visit Lula. More so than carrying a message of resistance, the caravan will reaffirm the belief that only Lula can stop hunger from spreading further.
The U.S. activist Angela Davis has visited Costa Rica to talk about feminism and the role of female activists to promote global change.
Latin America has always been a source of hope for the world.
Hope for the world. That's how Angela Davis describes the Latin American region. She recently visited Costa Rica to meet activists and share experiences. She highlighted the importance of social movements as force of change in the society.
I think it comes from movements. Politics, official politics are important, but only insofar as they are connected to what is happening on the ground. I would talk about a dialectical relationship between that realm of electoral politics and the realm of social movement.
Organizations.
Davis sent a special message to Afro women activists to remember the need to fight all together within the community and not taking on the struggle alone.
The women's movement is not simply a movement for women. When women rise up, that means the entire world rises with them. When women move forward, they bring the entire world with them. And especially when black women, who are the most subjugated of all, move forward, they bring everyone else with them.
Angela Davis became an inspiration for women across the world, thanks to her radical activism. She was one of the FBI's most wanted during the 70s, jailed and released after an international campaign was launched. She continues her fight as an activist for human rights, especially focused on women.
We have seen 50 years of development of radical movements, and precisely she's a role model to see how we need to keep fighting and always maintain a critical and radical mind thinking.
Angela Davis' visit has been a unique chance for Costa Ricans to learn about her life, her fight, and her struggle for women's empowerment. Her contribution to social movements is not often recognized enough.
Siempre ha habido mujeres. Women have always been a part of social movements throughout history, but we have been made invisible.
At 74 years old, Angela Davis, philosopher, black activist, feminist, former U.S. vice president candidate, and professor, has visited different South American countries to keep the debate and the fight by social movements alive.
In Jamaica, the Minister of Science and Technology, Dr. Andrew Wheatley, who recently had his energy portfolio stripped from him, has resigned. There were allegations of corruption and mismanagement at the state-owned oil company Petrojam and other entities under his portfolio. The opposition was adamant that he should be fired, and recently there was pressure from within his own party saying the same. Wheatley's resignation letter said there should be a performance review of the board and executive of the energy, science and technology portfolios, and that should be done without his presence or ministerial authority.
And committed to upholding.
In Trinidad and Tobago, former National Security Minister Gary Griffith has been confirmed as the next Commissioner of Police. For 6 years, there has only been an acting commissioner since former Commissioner, Canadian Dwayne Gibbs, resigned suddenly in 2012. This appointment is not without controversy. Griffith was never a police officer and didn't originally have the support of the rank and file. As a former Army captain, he also supports the militarization of the police service. However, because of flaws in the selection process, Griffith was essentially the last man standing out of the candidates, and if he had not been selected, the process to find a commissioner would have had to been restarted, which could have taken years. In Antigua and Barbuda, Prime Minister Gaston Brown is telling Barbudans to ensure their homes are properly secured this hurricane season, since it won't be easy to return to the international community for help again. Brown made the comments while signing a €5 million agreement with the European Union to repair homes on the island. But Brown's comments come at a time when tensions are high between the Barbuda Council and the central government, and the Prime Minister used the opportunity to push for the Barbuda Land Reform Act.
Land reform now gives them an opportunity to own the land for $1 so that they can go to the bank, borrow the money, and to rebuild. Again, I want to repeat that it is not the responsibility of the international community or the government of Antigua and Barbuda to rebuild the homes of people in Barbuda. It is the homeowner's primary responsibility, and that is why we created that additional option, to give them the opportunity so that they can go to the bank, charge the land, borrow the money, and rebuild their homes. That is a responsible thing to do.
We'll take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. We head to Madrid, Spain, where protests continue against the ride-sharing app Uber. Our correspondent there, Eduardo Marin, has more details.
The Ministry of Public Works and Transport has started meeting with the main associations of taxi drivers in Spain. These associations are unhappy and want a new regulation against the licenses known as VTC for vehicles belonging to Uber and Cabify.
An investigation into Cambridge Analytica by the British Parliament's Digital, Culture, Media and Sports Committee has revealed there was a campaign on Facebook against Cristina Fernández de Kirchner in the 2015 Argentinian elections. According to the report, the committee saw confidential evidence of an anti-Kirchner campaign in Argentina, describing close proximity, intelligence gathering efforts and information warfare, and the use of retired intelligence and security agency officers from Israel, USA, UK, Spain and Russia. It also pointed to the creation of false Facebook and Twitter accounts to support the anti-Kirchner campaign. Cambridge Analytica and Facebook have been embroiled in scandal where at least 87 million users' data has been misused. Saudi Arabia is being pressed by the United Nations Human Rights Office to release all activists, including the female activist Hatun Al-Fassi, who was arrested in June for planning to take journalists for a drive after the country announced it was lifting the ban on female drivers. The UN argues that recent reforms are not extending to civil liberties.
And we were perplexed because on the one hand you're seeing an opening up and a reform, and on the other hand you're seeing a crackdown on the people who are advocating for this kind of reform and opening up. From what we can observe, it appears that there are genuine reforms that are taking place in Saudi Arabia, but this has not extended to the civil and political rights sphere. Dissent, criticism of the government is still not accepted in the country.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at talisyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Talis Your English, I'm Sonia Gray. Thank you for watching.